Hello and welcome aboard to the Snoozy Voyager. Imagine a civilization that built towering stone pyramids in the heart of steaming jungles without metal tools or the wheel. A people who calculated the movements of Venus with accuracy that rivals modern astronomy, who invented the concept of zero before most of the world, and who created a writing system so complex we're still deciphering it today. And then, almost suddenly, they walked away. They abandoned their magnificent cities to the vines and the howler monkeys, leaving behind one of history's most haunting mysteries. This is the story of the Maya collapse. But here's the thing, calling it a collapse might be the biggest misunderstanding of all. Because while the great cities fell silent, the Maya themselves never actually disappeared. So what really happened? Why did they abandon their pyramid cities? Was it a drought, war, ecological disaster? Or was it something far more complicated? A perfect storm of human ambition meeting the limits of what the jungle could provide. Tonight we're going to explore the golden age of Maya civilization, walk through their breathtaking cities, decode their mysterious writing, and finally unravel what actually happened during the so-called collapse. This is a story of incredible achievement, environmental challenges, and human resilience. It's also a story about how sometimes the most interesting answer isn't the dramatic one, but the complicated, messy, very human one. But before we set sail, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple and wonderful way to support the channel, and it means a great deal to me. I'm also always curious to know where in the world and at what time you're joining me tonight. So I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. And now settle in. Let the noise of the modern world fade away, and let us travel back to a time of jade masks, sacred ball games, and cities rising from the jungle canopy like green islands in a sea of trees. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 750 AD in the great Maya city of Tikal, and your first thought is probably not about the majesty of ancient civilization. It's about the humidity. The air is so thick and wet it feels like you're breathing through a warm, damp towel. The sun hasn't even fully risen yet, but sweat is already pooling in places you didn't know could sweat. You're lying on a woven mat in a small limestone house with a thatched roof. And outside you can already hear the city coming to life, the sound of grinding corn, the chatter of early risers, and somewhere in the distance, the low, ominous boom of a drum from the great pyramid temple that looms over everything like a mountain made by human hands. Your house, if we're being generous with the term, is essentially a single rectangular room with walls made of limestone blocks and poles covered in plaster. The thatched roof keeps most of the rain out, most being the operative word. During the wet season, you've learned to strategically place pottery bowls under the leaks. The floor is packed earth, smooth from years of bare feet walking the same paths. There are no windows in the way you'd recognize them, just openings in the walls that let in light, air, and an alarming number of insects. Privacy is not really a concept here. Your entire extended family, somewhere between 6 and 10 people depending on who's visiting, shares this space. You stand up, your back protesting from sleeping on a woven palm mat that offers roughly the same cushioning as a particularly thin yoga mat on concrete. Stretching, you can hear the city's morning symphony building. Somewhere nearby, a howler monkey is expressing its opinions about the dawn with a roar that sounds like a jaguar gargling gravel. Dogs are barking. A baby is crying. And from every household comes that distinctive rhythmic scraping sound. The sound that will dominate much of your waking hours. Corn being ground on stone. Stepping outside into the pale pre-dawn light, you get your first proper look at your city. And despite the humidity, despite your aching back, despite everything, it's genuinely breathtaking. Tikal isn't some modest village, it's a genuine metropolis. The Great Pyramids rise above the jungle canopy like artificial mountains, their white limestone surfaces still glowing faintly in the early light. Temple 4, the tallest structure, towers over 200 feet into the sky. Around you, thousands of houses like yours spread in every direction, connected by white Sack Bay roads, the raised limestone causeways that link different parts of the city. The population here is somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 people, all packed into roughly 6 square miles of ceremonial centre and surrounding residential areas. It's more densely populated than many medieval European cities, and all of this, every pyramid, every palace, every reservoir, was built by people using stone tools without metal, without wheeled vehicles, without pack animals larger than a dog. It's like building Manhattan using only hand tools and sheer bloody-mindedness. Your commute to the fields begins. You join the growing stream of people heading out of the city centre. Nobles are being carried in litters, which honestly just looks exhausting for everyone involved. Merchants are heading to the marketplace with goods balanced on their backs in enormous baskets, secured by straps across their foreheads. Your destination is the agricultural terraces a mile outside the city centre, where you'll spend the day bent over in the sun, maintaining the maize fields that feed this impossible metropolis. As you walk, you pass the Great Plaza. Even at this early hour, priests are already climbing the steep steps of the central pyramid for the dawn ceremony. You can smell the copal incense burning, that distinctive piney sweet scent that means someone is talking to the gods. Work crew is already labouring on a new stela, a carved stone monument that will record the glorious deeds of the current king. They're using stone hammers and chisels, patiently pecking away at the limestone in a process that will take months to complete. Welcome to Tikal. Your morning commute is a mile-long walk through one of the most sophisticated cities in the ancient Americas, and you'll be sweating through your clothes before you've gone halfway. Try not to think about the fact that you won't shower for another 1,200 years or so. Let's address the obvious question that's probably bothering you as you stare up at the massive temple of the Great Jaguar, towering 154 feet into the sky. How exactly did they build this? And more importantly, why would anyone voluntarily decide to haul millions of limestone blocks up a pyramid in 90-degree heat and 90% humidity without so much as a wheeled cart to help? The Maya had perfectly functioning wheels, by the way. They put them on children's toys. They just apparently looked at the concept of the wheel as a labour-saving device and collectively decided, nah, we're good. It's like having a perfectly good microwave and choosing to cook everything over an open fire because that's how grandma did it. The construction of these pyramids is both a triumph of engineering and a testament to what humans will do when a god king tells them it's really important. The process begins at the quarries, where workers use stone hammers and wooden wedges to break limestone from the bedrock. They drive the wedges into natural cracks, soak them with water until they swell, and watch as the stone splits along predictable lines. It's slow, methodical work that requires more patience than brute force. Once a block is freed, usually weighing somewhere between 200 and 500 pounds, it needs to be moved. This is where things get interesting, or depending on your perspective, nightmarish. Without wheels or draft animals, every single block is moved by human muscle. The blocks are loaded onto wooden rollers or sledges, and teams of workers, sometimes dozens for a single large stone, pull them using ropes made from agave fibre. The ropes dig into your shoulders. Your feet slip on the white limestone dust. The sun beats down mercilessly, and you move that block maybe 20 feet before you have to stop and rest. Now imagine doing this thousands of times. Temple 4, the tallest pyramid, contains roughly 200,000 cubic meters of material. Each block had to be quarried, moved, lifted, and precisely placed. The larger pyramids took generations to complete, with each successive king adding layers and embellishments, its construction as multi-generational commitment, the architectural equivalent of planting a tree under whose shade you know you'll never sit. The pyramids aren't solid, which is the only reason they're even remotely feasible. The core is typically rubble, loose stones and fill material contained by precisely cut stone-facing blocks. But even with this shortcut, the labour involved is staggering. Archaeologists estimate that building a major temple would require somewhere between 50,000 and 80,000 person days of labour. That's roughly 200 people working full-time for a year, and that's just for one structure. Tikal has dozens, and here's where it gets even more absurd. You're not just building up, you're building stairs, some of them nearly vertical, that people are expected to actually climb. The steps on Temple 2 are so steep that going up them requires using your hands. Coming down requires either exceptional courage or exceptional stupidity, or possibly both. One wrong step and you're tumbling down 60 feet of unforgiving limestone. The Maya didn't do handrails. They believed that if the gods wanted you to reach the top, you'd manage it. If not, well, that's between you and the gods. The precision of the construction is remarkable. The facing stones fit together so tightly that you can't slip a knife blade between them. There's no mortar, just careful cutting and enormous weight holding everything together. The Maya builders used wooden stakes and ropes to establish sight lines, ensuring that the pyramid's angles were exact. Many pyramids are aligned with astronomical events, the corners pointing to cardinal directions, the structure positioned so that the sun illuminates specific architectural features on solstice days. Why go to all this trouble? Because these pyramids aren't buildings in the way we understand them. They're sacred mountains, artificial replicas of the cosmic mountain where the gods dwell. Climbing the pyramid is literally ascending toward the divine realm. The temple at the top is where the king performs bloodletting rituals, where priests burn offerings, where heaven and earth meet. These structures are the physical manifestation of the Maya cosmos made real in limestone and sweat. So when you look at the temple of the Great Jaguar towering above you, try to see it not as an architectural curiosity, but as thousands of people spending years of their lives hauling stones in the jungle heat, because they genuinely believed they were building a stairway to heaven. It's both awe-inspiring and slightly insane, which is basically the Maya civilization in a nutshell. Your morning meal is corn, your lunch will be corn, your dinner, also corn. If you're lucky, it might be corn with beans, on special occasions corn with chocolate. The Maya relationship with maize wasn't just agricultural, it was theological, mythological, and frankly, obsessive. According to their creation story, humans were literally made from corn dough after the gods' first two attempts with mud and wood didn't work out. This means your entire existence is basically a divine cornbread recipe that finally turned out right. You spend about 4 hours every morning grinding corn on a stone slab called a metanti, turning kernels into masa, and your knees and back are already filing formal complaints with your brain. The process begins before dawn. You take dried corn kernels, the ones you carefully stored after the last harvest, and boil them in water mixed with lime, not the fruit, the mineral calcium hydroxide from burned limestone. This process is called nixtamalization, and it's one of the Maya's greatest innovations. The lime softens the kernels, makes them easier to grind, and crucially, unlocks nutrients that would otherwise be unavailable. Without nixtamalization, a corn-only diet leads to pellagra, a nasty disease that causes skin lesions, dementia, and death. With it, corn becomes a complete enough food to sustain an entire civilization. After boiling, the corn needs to be rinsed, and then the real work begins. You kneel before your metate, a large rectangular stone with a slightly concave surface slanted at an angle. Using a mano, a cylindrical stone, roller, You begin grinding. Push forward, crush the kernels, scrape back, repeat. Push, crush, scrape, push, crush, scrape. The rhythm is hypnotic and mind-numbing in equal measure. Your shoulders burn, your lower back protests, your knees ache from kneeling on the hard floor, and you do this for hours, gradually transforming the boiled kernels into smooth masa dough. The sound of metates grinding is the morning soundtrack of every Maya household, a collective scraping rhythm that echoes through the entire city. If you stop and listen, you can hear dozens of your neighbours doing exactly what you're doing, all of you simultaneously preparing the day's food supply. It's communal labour rendered invisible by its ubiquity, women's work that consumes a substantial portion of every single day. Once the masa is ready, you shape it into flat discs and cook them on a clay griddle called a komel over an open fire. These are your tortillas, though calling them that feels anachronistic since that word won't exist for centuries. What you have are thin corn cakes that are the base of every meal. Sometimes you wrap them around beans, sometimes you add squash or chili peppers. On exceptional occasions, if someone's been successful hunting, you might add small pieces of meat, deer, peccary or turkey. But most days, it's corn and beans. The beans are black beans, cooked until they're soft and then mashed. They're actually a nutritional lifesaver because corn lacks certain amino acids that beans provide, and together they form a complete protein. Your ancestors figured this out through centuries of trial and error, though they understood it through mythology rather than biochemistry. The gods gave humans corn and beans together for a reason, and that reason is so you don't die of malnutrition. The monotony of the diet is occasionally broken by other foods. You forage for wild plants, gather fruits, hunt small game. But these are supplements, not staples. Corn is everything. The Maya calendar is built around the agricultural cycle of planting and harvesting corn. Religious ceremonies are timed to encourage corn growth. The gods themselves are fed with corn offerings. Your language has dozens of words for corn in its various stages. Green corn, ripe corn, sacred corn, seed corn. And here's the thing that would absolutely baffle you if you knew it. Corn doesn't actually exist in the wild. It's a human creation, domesticated from a grass called teosinte that bears almost no resemblance to the large, plump kernels you're grinding. Over thousands of years, through careful selection, your ancestors transformed a nearly inedible wild grass into the foundation of civilization. Every kernel you grind is a small miracle of agricultural engineering. The creation myth suddenly makes more sense. Humans didn't just cultivate corn, they created it. And in turn, corn created the civilization that sustains you. It's a symbiotic relationship so complete that neither could exist without the other. You are, quite literally, people of the corn, and every morning you spend 4 hours on your knees being reminded of that fact. Your breakfast is a stack of warm tortillas, some beans, maybe a small cup of pozole, a corn-based drink. It's not glamorous, it's not varied, but it's what keeps 80,000 people alive in the middle of the jungle. Bon appétit, and try not to think too hard about the fact that you'll be doing this again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of your life. Walking through the plaza, you notice something interesting about Maya fashion. The nobles are dripping in jade jewellery, elaborate feathered headdresses that would make a peacock jealous, and intricately woven textiles. Meanwhile, most commoners, including you, are wearing what basically amounts to a loincloth and calling it a day. And honestly, given the heat, the nobles are the ones who look uncomfortable. That Maya king over there is wearing a jade mosaic, mask, a quetzal feather headdress weighing about 15 pounds, and a ceremonial belt made of jade, shells and jaguar pelts. He looks magnificent. He also looks like he's about to pass out from heat exhaustion. You, on the other hand, in your simple cotton loincloth are relatively breezy. Sometimes being poor has its advantages, and not dying of heat stroke in ceremonial wear is definitely one of them. Your daily outfit is remarkably simple. Men wear an X, a loincloth made from a long strip of cotton cloth that passes between the legs and wraps around the waist, leaving the ends hanging decoratively in front and back. That's it. That's the whole outfit. In particularly formal situations, you might add a simple cotton cloak called a patty, but most days in the field, just the loincloth. It's practical, cool, and uses minimal fabric, which is valuable since every thread has to be hand-spun and hand-woven. Women's clothing is only slightly more elaborate. The basic outfit consists of a huipil, a loose-fitting tunic made from a rectangular piece of cloth with holes cut for the head and arms. It hangs to mid-thigh or knee length and provides modest coverage while still allowing air circulation. Married women often add a wraparound skirt called a pick. Hair is usually worn long and sometimes tied up in elaborate arrangements, and that's the standard outfit for about 90% of the population. The real fashion statements are happening among the nobility, and they are statements. Noble dress is designed to announce status so loudly that even the gods in heaven can see it. Starting from the top, quite literally, there are the headdresses. These aren't hats, these are architectural achievements. The most elaborate versions feature long green quetzal feathers, sometimes 4 feet long, arranged in stunning fan patterns. The quetzal bird is sacred, associated with the sky and the gods, and killing one is forbidden. You can take its tail feathers, but the bird must be released unharmed. This makes the feathers incredibly rare and valuable. The headdresses are built on a framework of wood or woven plant materials, decorated with jade, shells, small mirrors made of polished iron pyrite, and carved bone. They're secured with straps under the chin because without them, the whole thing would topple backward under its own weight. Wearing one requires exceptional neck strength and balance. You've seen nobles practicing walking with their headdresses, learning the specific posture required to keep 20 pounds of regalia balanced on your head. Then there's the jade. The Maya are obsessed with jade, considering it more valuable than gold, which they view as merely decorative. Jade is sacred, associated with water, maize, and the centre of the cosmos. It's found in only a few places in the Maya world, making it rare and precious. Nobles wear jade everywhere. Ear spools, massive cylindrical pieces of jade inserted into stretched earlobes, nose ornaments, lip, plugs, pectorals, large chess pieces, bracelets, anklets. Some nobles have so much jade hanging off them that they clink when they walk. The most extreme jade fashion is dental modification. Nobles have their teeth filed and inlaid with small jade discs. The procedure is exactly as painful as it sounds. A skilled craftsman uses a drill made of obsidian or bone, slowly grinding through the tooth enamel to create a shallow hole. A perfectly shaped jade disc is then cemented in place with plant resin. The result is a glittering smile that marks you as unmistakably noble and probably in considerable pain for weeks after the procedure. Body modification extends beyond teeth. The Maya practice cranial shaping, where an infant's head is bound between 2 boards, gradually elongating the skull into a dramatic sloping shape. The ideal head slopes backward from the forehead, creating a profile that matches the sacred maize god. This is done to babies before their skulls fully harden, and the result is permanent. To Maya eyes, a naturally round head looks strange and unattractive. Another beauty standard involves the eyes. Nobles dangle objects in front of babies' faces to encourage them to become permanently cross-eyed. Cross eyes are considered beautiful, a sign of nobility. Your vision might be compromised, but you look fantastic, at least according to local aesthetic standards. The textiles worn by nobles are masterpieces of weaving. Using backstrap looms, weavers create complex patterns in brilliant colours derived from natural dyes. Red from cochineal insects, blue from indigo, purple from murex snails, yellow from various plant sources. The most complex pieces take months to weave, with designs encoding mythology, history and family lineage. A noble's ceremonial robe might tell an entire story in woven threads. All of this elaborate costume serves a purpose beyond vanity. In a society where most people are nearly naked most of the time, clothing becomes a powerful marker of status. You can identify someone's social position from 100 yards away just by looking at what they're wearing, or more accurately, how much they're wearing. The more you're sweating under layers of ceremonial regalia, the more important you are. It's a system where suffering for fashion isn't just expected, it's required. Meanwhile, you in your simple loincloth are perfectly comfortable, which is its own kind of victory. In the centre of the city is a massive stone ball court, and today there's a game. This isn't just entertainment, it's religion, politics and sports rolled into one terrifying spectacle. The players are trying to get a solid rubber ball, about the size of a bowling ball and just as heavy, through a stone ring mounted 20 feet up on the wall. They can only use their hips, thighs and arms, no hands or feet. It's like volleyball meets basketball meets trying not to die. The ball is moving at deadly speeds and players are wearing thick padding, because getting hit by it can actually crack ribs. And here's the fun part, depending on which scholars you believe, the losers, or possibly the winners, it's genuinely unclear, might be ritually sacrificed at the end of the game. Imagine if the Super Bowl ended with a beheading and you'll get the vibe. The ball court itself is an architectural marvel and a source of endless fascination. It's shaped like a capital I, with a long narrow playing alley flanked by sloping walls or sometimes vertical walls depending on the regional style. Tikal's Great Ball Court is about 150 feet long, with walls rising about 15 feet high. At the midpoint of each wall, mounted about 20 feet up, is a stone ring, carved with elaborate designs and barely wider than the ball itself. Getting the ball through those rings is monumentally difficult, and when it happens, the crowd absolutely loses its collective mind. The ball itself is made of solid rubber, harvested from rubber trees and processed into a dense, bouncy sphere. The Maya discovered how to vulcanize rubber, mixing the latex with juice from morning glory vines to create a material that's both elastic and durable. This ball weighs between 6 and 9 pounds and can reach speeds of over 60 miles per hour. Getting hit by it is like getting punched by a small, angry boulder. The players enter the court wearing protective gear that makes them look like they're preparing for medieval combat, which isn't far from the truth. They wear thick padding around their hips, waists and forearms, often reinforced with wood or leather. Some wear helmets. All of this is necessary because the primary technique involves using your hip to strike the ball, and doing so repeatedly leaves massive bruises. Players often display their bruises with pride, marks of dedication and toughness. The game begins with a ritual ceremony. Priests bless the court and the ball. Incense is burned. Prayers are offered to the gods. The ball isn't just equipment, it's sacred, representing the sun journeying through the underworld, or a severed head from mythology, or the cycles of death and rebirth. Every match reenacts cosmic struggles between order and chaos, light and dark, life and death. No pressure, just try to have fun out there. The actual gameplay is controlled chaos. The ball is served and players use any part of their bodies except hands and feet to keep it in play. Hitting it with your hip generates the most power, but requires perfect timing and positioning. The ball ricochets off the sloped walls at unpredictable angles. Players dive, leap, and throw their bodies at the ball with complete commitment. Collisions between players are common and brutal. Blood is frequently shed, though usually not fatally. Usually. Scoring is complex. Different actions earn different points, hitting certain markers on the walls, getting the ball past the end line, and the ultimate achievement, getting the ball through the stone, ring, which might end the game immediately. But that rarely happens. The rings are small, positioned high, and angled in a way that makes success require a combination of skill and luck, bordering on divine intervention. The crowd watching from the tops of the walls and from special viewing platforms is massive and raucous. They cheer, shout advice, place bets, and provide a running commentary. Important matches might draw thousands of spectators. The wealthy sit in shaded viewing areas. Everyone else bakes in the sun. Vendors move through the crowd selling food and drinks. It's part religious ceremony, part sporting event, part social gathering. And then there's the sacrifice question. We know from carvings and artwork that some ball game ceremonies ended with human sacrifice, usually decapitation. What we don't know is which team got sacrificed. Some evidence suggests it was the losers, which makes sense from a modern perspective. But other evidence suggests it was the winners who were granted the honour of being sacrificed to the gods. Imagine training your whole life to win, achieving victory, and your reward is having your heart cut out on the temple steps. It's either the ultimate honour or the worst prize ever, depending on your perspective and level of religious conviction. The truth is probably more complex. Different cities and different eras had different practices. Some games were purely athletic competitions with no sacrifice. Others were explicitly tied to warfare, with captured enemy nobles forced to play rigged games before their inevitable execution. And some were sacred rituals where willing volunteers, probably drugged to reduce terror, were sacrificed as offerings to ensure cosmic balance. What's certain is that the ball game was central to Maya culture. Every major city had at least one ball court, often multiple. Players were celebrities, their exploits recorded in carved monuments. The game served as a substitute for warfare, a way to settle disputes, a religious ritual, and entertainment all at once. It was the beating heart of public life, literally in some cases, and watching it, even knowing you'll never be skilled enough or important enough to play, is one of the most thrilling experiences available in your world. Just try not to think too hard about how it might end for the players. You're a farmer, which means your primary job is trying to grow food in a place that seems actively designed to make farming as difficult as possible. The soil is thin. The limestone bedrock is right underneath. There are no rivers on the surface because the water drains straight down into underground caves, and the rainy season is either a torrential flood or a devastating drought, with very little middle ground. The Maya solved this through sheer ingenious stubbornness. They built elaborate terraces on hillsides to prevent erosion, created raised fields and swamps, and developed a water management system of reservoirs and channels that would make a Roman engineer weep with envy. And they did all of this, again, without wheeled carts or metal tools, just stone, wood, and apparently an infinite capacity for hard labour. Your primary field is about a mile from the city centre, a plot that your family has worked for generations. Getting there means walking along one of the Sakbe roads in the pre-dawn darkness, joining the stream of other farmers heading to their plots. You carry your tools, a digging stick made from hardwood, sharpened and fire-hardened at the tip, a stone axe for clearing brush, a bag of seed corn saved from last year's harvest, and a water gourd because you'll be working in full sun for the next 8 hours. The agricultural year is governed by the calendar and by careful observation of natural signs. Planting happens at the beginning of the rainy season, which should arrive around May, but is increasingly unpredictable. You watch for signs, the flowering of certain trees, the behaviour of animals, the position of the Pleiades constellation. Plant too early and your seeds rot in dry ground. Plant too late and the growing season is too short. The window is narrow and unforgiving. Your primary technique is called milpa agriculture, a sophisticated system of polyculture that's been refined over millennia. You're not just planting corn. You're planting corn, beans and squash together, the three sisters that support each other in a beautiful agricultural symbiosis. The corn stalks provide structure for the bean plants to climb. The beans fix nitrogen in the soil, fertilizing the corn. The squash spreads across the ground, its broad leaves shading the soil, retaining moisture and suppressing weeds. Together they produce more food per acre than any single crop alone, and they don't deplete the soil as quickly. Before planting, you clear the field using slash-and-burn agriculture. You cut down smaller trees and brush using your stone axe, a process that takes days and leaves your arms aching. The debris is left to dry during the dry season, then burned just before the rains. The ash fertilizes the soil, the fire clears the field, and you're left with a plot studded with blackened stumps and larger trees that are too big to fell. You plant around them, the field a patchwork of crops and standing timber. Planting is done with your digging stick. You use it to punch holes in the earth, about 18 inches apart, arranged in a grid pattern that seems random to outsiders but follows a sophisticated logic. Into each hole you drop 4 or 5 kernels of corn, then a few bean seeds. You move to the next hole, plant over and over until your field is seeded. Later you'll add squash between the corn mounds. Your back screams at you. The sun turns your skin the colour of terracotta, but you keep going because if you don't plant now, you don't eat later. The math is brutal and simple. Once planted, the field requires constant maintenance. Weeding is endless. Jungle growth is aggressive and opportunistic. Leave your field unattended for 2 weeks and it starts reverting to forest. You weed by hand, pulling invading plants that compete with your crops. It's monotonous, back-breaking work done under the full force of the tropical sun. You wrap a cloth around your head to keep the sweat from your eyes. You work in the early morning and late afternoon, resting in whatever shade you can find during the brutal midday heat. Water is always a concern. You're dependent on rainfall, and rainfall is becoming less reliable. The Maya built sophisticated water management systems to address this. Throughout the city and its surroundings, massive reservoirs called aguadas collect rainwater. These are artificial ponds, sometimes lined with clay to reduce seepage, capable of holding millions of gallons. Channels direct runoff from plazas and roads into these reservoirs. During the dry season, these aguadas are lifelines, providing water for drinking, cooking, and supplemental irrigation. Some fields use more intensive techniques. In low-lying areas prone to flooding, raised fields are constructed. These are elevated planting surfaces surrounded by canals. The canals provide water during dry periods, and the mud dredged from them fertilizes the raised beds. It's an ingenious system that turns swampland into productive farmland, but it's also incredibly labor-intensive to build and maintain. Miles of canals must be kept clear of vegetation. The raised beds must be reinforced and rebuilt after each rainy season. On hillsides, terraces prevent the thin soil from washing away. These aren't simple steps. They're complex structures with stone-retaining walls, drainage systems, and carefully graded surfaces. Building them is a multi-generational project. Your great-grandfather built the lowest terraces. Your father extended them uphill. You maintain them, and will probably add another level before you die. Its agriculture is patient, continuous engineering. The reward for all this labour comes at harvest, usually in the fall. When the corn ears are full and the kernels have hardened, you harvest by hand, snapping off each ear and tossing it into a basket on your back. The dried corn is shucked, the good ears saved for food and seed, the rest fed to turkeys or ground into animal feed. A good harvest from your plot might yield enough corn to feed your family for a year with surplus to trade. A bad harvest means hunger. And here's the thing that keeps you up at night. The margin between success and failure is razor thin. One bad drought, one unexpected flood, an infestation of pests. Any of these can destroy a year's work. And you're not just farming for yourself. You owe tribute to the king, a percentage of your harvest paid as tax. The temples demand offerings. Your extended family depends on you. The pressure is immense and relentless. You're farming the unfarmable, coaxing food from stone and jungle through techniques developed over centuries. It works. It has to work. 80,000 people are depending on farmers like you to make the impossible happen every single year. No pressure. Just keep digging those holes and hope the rain comes when it's supposed to. In the centre of the plaza stands a massive sabre tree, and it's not just a tree, it's the axis of the entire universe. According to Maya cosmology, the world is divided into 3 levels. There's the underworld below, the earthly realm in the middle, and the heavens above, and the sabre tree is the cosmic elevator connecting all 3. Its roots reach down into Xibalba, the underworld, a place of terrifying gods and tests. Its trunk holds up the earthly plane where you live, and its branches reach up into the 13 layers of heaven. This tree is so sacred that even touching it without permission could get you in serious trouble. It's like the universe's support beam, and everyone knows you don't mess with the support beam. The Kaaba, known as Yakje in Maya, is impossible to miss. It grows to enormous heights, sometimes over 200 feet tall, with a thick trunk that can be 15 feet in diameter. Its branches spread in a wide canopy, providing shade to a significant portion of the plaza. The trunk is often covered in thick conical spines that make climbing it both difficult and painful, which seems appropriate for something that's supposed to connect the mortal and divine realms. The gods aren't making it easy. The tree stands in a place of honour, surrounded by a clear space where no one builds, no one farms, and no one approaches without proper reverence. During major ceremonies, priests perform rituals at the base of the tree offering copal incense, bloodletting, and prayers. The smoke from the incense rises through the branches, carrying messages to the gods in the upper world. The blood soaks into the roots, feeding the lords of the underworld. The tree is a conduit, a cosmic telephone line that works in both directions. In Maya mythology, the Kaaba appears repeatedly as the world tree, the axis mundi that organizes space and time. The 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, are each associated with a color, a god, and a sacred tree. But the center, the 5th direction, is the most important. It's represented by the blue-green saber, the tree that connects the layers of reality. Standing at its base, you're standing at the center of everything. The cosmological structure is complex and layered. Below you are 9 levels of the underworld, Xibalba, the place of fear. Each level is ruled by different death gods with charming names like Blood Gatherer and Pussmaster. These aren't metaphorical figures. To the Maya, they're real entities that must be appeased, negotiated with, and occasionally tricked, as the hero twins did in the sacred stories. The underworld isn't just where you go when you die. It's where the sun travels at night, where maize seeds must journey, before sprouting, where water flows through underground rivers. It's dark, dangerous, and absolutely necessary for the functioning of the cosmos. Above you are 13 levels of heaven, each presided over by different gods. The lowest levels are accessible to the sun and moon. The highest levels are home to the supreme creator deities, the remote and abstract forces that set the universe in motion. These upper levels are associated with birds, which is why Quetzal feathers are so sacred. They come from creatures that spend their lives closer to heaven than earthbound humans. And here in the middle is the earthly realm, the surface of the world, floating like a platform between the levels above and below. The earth itself is sometimes envisioned as the back of a massive cosmic crocodile floating in a primordial sea. Mountains are sacred high places, closer to heaven. Caves are portals to the underworld. Cenotes, the natural sinkholes that provide access to groundwater, are particularly sacred because they're literal openings into the underworld, places where you can see the underground rivers that flow through Xibalba. The ceiba tree connects all of these levels. Its roots penetrate the underworld, drawing up water and nutrients, literally pulling sustenance from the realm of death. Its trunk exists in the middle world, providing shade, shelter, and a physical anchor. And its branches reach toward heaven, home to birds and clouds and gods. The tree is a living diagram of the cosmos, and standing near it you can feel the weight of that symbolism. Different species of ceiba grow throughout the Maya world, but the one in Tikal Plaza is ancient, possibly several hundred years old, planted by the city's founders or perhaps even earlier. It has witnessed the rise of dynasties, the construction of pyramids, countless ceremonies, and generations of lives beginning and ending. The tree is continuity made wood, a living connection to ancestors and gods. Children are taught about the ceiba from their earliest days. You learn that when you die, if you've lived well and performed the proper rituals, your soul will need to travel through the underworld, facing the challenges of Xibalba, and eventually be reborn. The ceiba's roots provide a path for this journey. The tree is a map, a guide, and a promise that death is not an ending but a transformation. During the day, the tree is a gathering place. People sit in its shade to escape the heat. Traders meet there to negotiate deals. Children play carefully within view but not too close. Priests climb the pyramid nearby to perform ceremonies at dawn and dusk. And always, the tree stands as a reminder of the vertical structure of reality, the layered cosmos that defines Maya understanding of existence. At night, the ceiba takes on a different character. Bats roost in its branches, and bats are associated with the underworld and death. The tree becomes slightly ominous, a dark column rising against the stars. People avoid it after dark unless attending a ceremony. There are stories of spirits seen near the tree, ancestors visiting from the underworld, or gods descending from heaven. Whether you believe these stories or not, you don't test them. The tree demands respect. The sacred ceiba is more than symbolism. It's a functional part of the city's religious and social infrastructure. It provides orientation, both literally, as a landmark visible from anywhere in the city, and metaphorically, as a reminder of where you stand in the cosmic order. You're not just a person in a city. You're a being in the middle realm, connected above and below to forces that dwarf your individual existence. The tree makes sure you never forget that. Every time you cross the plaza, you see it. Every ceremony references it. It's the vertical axis around which the entire Maya world spins, and somehow it's just a tree, growing in the same soil where you plant your corn, the sacred and the ordinary intertwined, like roots and earth, like heaven and underworld, like everything in the Maya cosmos. It's festival day, which means the king and queen are about to perform a bloodletting ritual, and you're required to watch. This is not a metaphorical sacrifice. This is the queen taking a rope embedded with obsidian shards and pulling it through her tongue, while the king does something equally unpleasant involving a very sensitive part of his anatomy. The blood is collected on bark paper and then burned, the smoke rising as an offering to the gods. The Maya believed that blood, especially royal blood, was the most precious gift you could offer to the divine. It's like a subscription service to cosmic favour, paid in pain. And while you're glad you're not the one doing it, you can't help but wonder if the gods might accept, say, corn instead. The ritual begins at dawn. The entire population has gathered in the great plaza. Thousands of people pressed together in the earlies. Morning light. The air is thick with copal incense, that sticky, sweet, piney smoke that means something important is happening. Drums boom in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. You can feel the vibration in your chest, like a second heartbeat. The king and queen emerge from the palace, and even from a distance you can see they're already in an altered state. They've been fasting for days and have probably consumed powerful hallucinogens, possibly balchi, a fermented honey drink mixed with bark from the balchi tree or something stronger. Their eyes are distant, their movements slow and ritual. They're not just performing a ceremony, they're preparing to communicate with forces beyond normal human perception. Bloodletting, called Cha'ab in Maya, is the most important ritual obligation of rulers. The gods sacrificed their own blood to create humans from maize. In return, humans must offer blood back to sustain the gods. It's cosmic reciprocity, and the higher your status, the more blood you're expected to give. Commoners might prick their earlobes or fingers, nobles pierce their tongues or cheeks, but royalty, they go further. The king approaches the altar first. He's stripped to a simple loincloth, his body painted with sacred designs in blue and red. A priest hands him a stingray spine, a long serrated bone that's naturally sharp. Or sometimes it's an obsidian blade or an obsidian-edged rope. The specific instrument varies, but the purpose doesn't. The king positions the spine, and without hesitation pierces his penis. From where you're standing, you can't see the exact details, and you're profoundly grateful for that. But you see his body tense, see his face contort despite the drugs dulling the pain. Blood drips onto sheets of bark paper laid out on the altar. The paper made from fig tree bark is incredibly absorbent. It soaks up the royal blood, each drop sacred, each drop necessary. The king continues drawing the spine through the wound, or in some rituals, pulling a thorned cord through the initial puncture. The pain must be extraordinary, transcendent, pushing him into a state of consciousness where the barrier between human and divine becomes thin. The queen performs a similar ritual, though her sacrifice is different. She kneels before the altar and takes a prepared rope, a cord woven with embedded obsidian shards or thorns. She extends her tongue, and then, with shocking deliberation, she draws the rope through it. The obsidian cuts the delicate flesh. Blood flows freely, running down her chin, dripping onto the paper below. Her face shows the agony, but also something else. Transcendence. Ecstasy, even. Through pain, she's achieving communication with the gods. This goes on for what feels like hours, but is probably 20 or 30 minutes. The blood-soaked paper is collected and placed in a sacred bowl. A priest sets it alight. The paper catches quickly, and thick smoke rises, carrying the blood offering to the heavens. The smoke forms shapes, and priests and nobles interpret these shapes as messages from the gods. You see a jaguar. Someone else sees a serpent. The king, through his pain-induced vision, sees his ancestors materializing in the smoke, offering counsel and blessing. The theological logic makes a certain brutal sense. Blood is life, the most precious thing you possess. Offering it demonstrates absolute sincerity. You can't fake pulling a thorned cord through your tongue. The pain ensures that the ritual is real, meaningful, and costly. And the bloodletting puts the participant in an altered state, a combination of pain, blood loss, fasting, and drugs that opens doors in perception. In this state, the normally invisible becomes visible. Gods appear, ancestors speak, the future reveals itself in visions. For the king and queen, this isn't an occasional ritual, it's a regular obligation, performed during planting season, harvest, during droughts, before wars, after victories. Their bodies bear the scars of countless ceremonies. The king's tongue and penis are covered in scar tissue. The queen's tongue is similarly marked. These scars are badges of piety, proof of their dedication to their divine responsibilities. But here's the thing that makes your stomach clench. It's not just royalty who does this. During major ceremonies, Nobles are expected to participate as well. They might pierce their ears, tongues, or cheeks, collecting their blood for offerings. It's a hierarchy of suffering, with the king and queen at the top bearing the greatest pain, and everyone below them contributing what they can. Commoners like you are mostly exempt from the self-mutilation. You offer drops of blood from pricked fingers or earlobes during household rituals. But you're required to witness the royal ceremonies. Seeing the king and queen willingly endure this agony is supposed to inspire awe, loyalty and confidence. If they're willing to suffer this much for the gods, surely the gods will bless the city. Surely the rains will come. Surely the crops will grow. And when the crops don't grow, when the rains fail despite all this blood, that's when doubts start to creep in. Not doubts about the gods exactly, but doubts about the king's connection to them. If he's truly divine, why isn't it working? Why are we still hungry? These are dangerous thoughts, the kind you don't say out loud. But standing here, watching the king bleed while your stomach growls with hunger from another failed harvest, you can feel them in the air. Uncertainty, fear, the beginning of something breaking. The ceremony ends. The king and queen are helped to their feet by attendants. They're wrapped in fine mantles and escorted back to the palace to recover. The crowd disperses, buzzing with conversation about what the smoke revealed, what blessings the gods promised. You head home, profoundly glad that your most sacred responsibility is grinding corn, not bleeding for the gods. Some honours you're happy to leave to others. The Maya didn't have just one calendar. They had at least 3, all running simultaneously like some kind of temporal juggling act. There's the 365-day solar calendar, the 260-day sacred calendar, and the long count calendar that tracks time in cycles of thousands of years. Your birthday wasn't just a date, it was a destiny. If you were born on a day associated with the jaguar, you might become a warrior. Born on a day of the maize god, probably a farmer. The day you were born determined your personality, your profession, and your fate. It's like astrology, except the entire civilization ran on it. And unlike our modern horoscopes, which you can safely ignore, the Maya calendar actually determined when you could plant crops, wage war, or get married. The most important calendar for your daily life is the Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred calendar. It's formed by combining 13 numbers with 20-day names, cycling, through 260 unique combinations before repeating. Nobody knows exactly why it's 260 days. Some scholars think it's based on the human gestation period. Others point to agricultural cycles or astronomical observations. What matters is that every single day has a specific character, energy, and association that determines what should and shouldn't be done. When a child is born, the first crucial task is determining exactly which day in the calendar they arrived. This isn't just recording a date, it's discovering their destiny. A priest diviner called an arkin, the one of the sun, is consulted. He examines the sacred books, painted bark paper codices filled with intricate tables and glyphs. He calculates the day name and number combination, and from this he derives the child's character, talents, and fate. Born on the day Imix, the first day associated with the world crocodile and primordial waters, you'll be nurturing, possibly a healer or midwife, but also prone to emotional turbulence like the sea. Born on Ix, the jaguar day, you're marked for strength, stealth, possibly warfare or hunting. But you'll also have a dark side, a capacity for violence that must be carefully managed. Born on Kan, the maize day, you're blessed for agriculture, but you'll be tied to the land, your fortunes rising and falling with the harvest. Your own day name is Khan, which is both a blessing and a limitation. You are destined to work the earth, to coax life from soil. Your parents heard this prophecy when you were born, and they raised you accordingly. There was never a question of becoming a scribe or a warrior. Your path was set the moment you took your first breath. The calendar governs everything. Need to plant your field? Consult the Tzolk'in. Certain days are auspicious for planting, others are disastrous. Plant on the wrong day, and your crops will fail regardless of your skill. Planning a wedding? Some days are blessed for unions, others will doom the marriage before it begins. About to go to war? Launch your attack on a favourable day and you'll return victorious. Attack on an unfavourable day and you'll be captured and sacrificed. The complexity is staggering. The Tzolk'in runs alongside the Hab, the 365-day solar calendar used for agricultural planning. The Hab has 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short 5-day period at the end called Wayeb, which is considered unlucky and dangerous. During Wayeb, you avoid travel, major decisions, or any important activities. The barrier between the mortal world and the underworld is thin during these days. Demons can slip through. It's basically 5 days of civilization-wide anxiety. The two calendars, the 260-day Tzolk'in and the 365-day Hab, mesh like gears, creating the calendar round. Any specific date combination won't repeat for 52 years. Reaching the completion of a calendar round living 52 years is a major achievement worth celebrating. Many people don't make it that long. And then there's the long count, the linear calendar that tracks time from a mythological creation date in 3114 BCE. It counts in units. Kins are days, Uinals are 20 days, Tunes are 360 days, Katuns are 20 tons, and Baktuns are 20 Katuns. This system allows the Maya to record dates thousands of years in the past or future with precision. When a monument says a king was born on 915.3.68, any educated person can calculate exactly when that was. This temporal precision matters because the Maya believe time is cyclical. History repeats in patterns. By studying what happened in previous cycles, you can predict what will happen in future ones. The gods associated with specific days will act in predictable ways. This means the future isn't completely fixed, but it follows patterns, like a river following its channel. Priests spend years learning to read these patterns. They memorize the astronomical movements of Venus, which has its own 584-day cycle that must be calculated and tracked. Venus's morning star is associated with war. Warfare should be timed to Venus's appearances. They track the moon's cycles, the sun's position, the appearance of constellations. All of this information is integrated into a complex web of temporal knowledge. For you, this manifests as occasional consultations with a daykeeper when making important decisions. Should you clear a new field this year? Which day should you plant? Is this a good year for your daughter to marry? You don't have the knowledge to calculate these things yourself, so you pay a daykeeper, offering him payment in cacao beans or labour. He consults his books or memory, calculates the interactions of the various calendrical cycles, and gives you advice. Sometimes the advice is frustratingly restrictive. You want to plant next week, but the daykeeper says you must wait another 20 days for an auspicious day. Your logic says the rains might be over by then, but going against the calendar is unthinkable. So you wait, and hope, and trust that thousands of years of accumulated astronomical and agricultural knowledge encoded in these cycles knows better than your impatience. The calendar also marks the major festivals that structure the year. Every 20 days is a month boundary, usually celebrated with ceremonies and offerings. Certain dates require pilgrimages to sacred caves or cenotes. The king's accession anniversary is a major celebration. Solar and lunar eclipses are predicted and feared, requiring special rituals to ensure the sun or moon aren't permanently devoured. Living by the calendar creates a strange relationship with time. You're always aware of where you stand in multiple overlapping cycles. Today isn't just today, it's the specific intersection of the Tzolk'in day, the Harb month, the phase of the moon, the position of Venus, and the long count date. Time has texture, quality, and character. Some days feel heavy with destiny, others light and inconsequential, and underlying everything is a low-level anxiety. Are we reading the cycles correctly? The priests assure everyone they are, but the droughts are getting worse. The rains don't come when the calendar says they should. The carefully maintained order of the cosmos seems to be slipping. Maybe there's an error in the calculations. Maybe the gods have changed their minds. Or maybe, most terrifying of all, maybe the cycles we've trusted for centuries are breaking down. But you push these thoughts away. The calendar has worked for generations. It predicted the eclipses. It guided your ancestors to prosperity. So you trust it, because not trusting it would mean admitting that you're lost in time, unmoored from the patterns that give life meaning. Better to believe in the cycles, mark your days by the sacred names, and hope that the pattern holds just a little longer. Everywhere you look, there are glyphs. They're carved into stone monuments, painted on pottery, written in bark paper books. Maya writing isn't just an alphabet. It's a complex combination of logograms and syllables, capable of recording history, poetry, mathematics, and astronomy with stunning precision. But here's the thing, it's also ridiculously complicated. There are over 800 different glyphs, and many of them can be written in multiple ways depending on artistic preference. Learning to read Maya script takes years of training, which is why scribes are one of the most respected professions in the city. They're the keepers of knowledge, the recorders of history, and the only people who can tell you what that monument actually says instead of just making something up that sounds impressive. You stand in the plaza before a newly erected stela, a limestone monument taller than 2 men, its surface covered in elaborate carvings. At the top is an image of the king in full ceremonial regalia, standing triumphant, his foot on the back of a captive enemy. Below this scene, covering most of the monument's surface, are blocks of glyphs arranged in a grid pattern. To you, they're beautiful but incomprehensible, swirling designs that might as well be decorative art. But to a scribe, this monument is speaking. It's announcing the king's name, his titles, his lineage stretching back through generations. It's recording the date of a military victory using the long count calendar, precise to the day. It's describing the battle, naming the captured enemy king, and declaring the glory this victory brings to Tikal and its gods. Every glyph is intentional, every combination of symbols adding layers of meaning. Maya writing was developed over centuries, emerging from earlier symbolic art and evolving into a fully functional writing system capable of recording any thought or idea. It's one of only a handful of writing systems invented independently in human history, alongside Sumerian, Chinese, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. The Maya accomplished this without any outside influence, creating a script that's uniquely suited to recording their language and worldview. The system is logosyllabic, meaning it combines 2 different types of glyphs. Logograms represent entire words or concepts. The glyph for king, Ajor, for sky, Chan, for blood, Chich. These can be read even if you don't know how they're pronounced, similar to how you can understand a picture of a sun means sun regardless of language. But there are also syllabic signs that represent sounds, be, ka, no, and hundreds of others. These can be combined to spell out words phonetically. And here's where it gets really complex. The same word can often be written either with a single logogram or spelled out syllabically, or even as a combination of both. Scribes made these choices based on aesthetic preference, available space, and artistic composition. The result is a script that's incredibly flexible, but also maddeningly difficult to learn. To be literate, you need to memorize hundreds of logograms, hundreds of syllabic signs, understand the grammar of the language, recognize that glyphs can be written in multiple styles, and be able to read them in the correct order. Maya glyphs are typically read in double columns from left to right, top to bottom, but within each pair of columns there are sub-patterns that can vary. Scribes, called Ajtasib, the ones who write, are members of an elite profession. They're usually from noble families, though exceptionally talented commoners can sometimes be apprenticed. Training begins in childhood and lasts years. Young scribes practice on pottery shards, painting glyphs over and over until their hands learn the proper curves and proportions. They memorize the basic syllabary. They study the logograms. They learn the conventional ways of writing royal names, dates, and historical events. The tools of the trade are specialized and precious. Scribes write on bark paper made from fig trees, processed through boiling and beating until the fibers mat into smooth sheets. These sheets are sized with lime plaster to create a paintable surface, then folded accordion style into codices. The paint is made from ground minerals and plant materials, red from hematite, black from carbon, blue from a complex mixture involving indigo and a specific clay. The brushes are made from animal hair, possibly rabbit, tied to wooden handles. Writing a codex is painstaking work. Each glyph must be perfectly proportioned, fitting into its designated space while remaining readable. Mistakes can't be easily corrected. The scribe must plan the entire page layout before beginning, calculating how much space each text block will require. Many codices are illustrated with elaborate scenes showing gods, rituals, and mythological events. These images aren't just decorative, they're integrated with the text, providing context and additional layers of meaning. Stone carving requires even more skill. The scribe first draws the glyphs on the stone surface using paint or charcoal. Then specialized stone carvers, working under the scribe's direction, laboriously peck away the limestone using stone hammers and chisels. Deep carving creates dramatic shadows that make the glyphs easier to read. The best monuments have glyphs carved in such high relief that they are almost sculptural. The content recorded in glyphs is diverse. Royal monuments record dynastic histories, births, accessions, marriages, warfare, bloodletting ceremonies, and deaths. These texts established the king's legitimacy by connecting him to glorious ancestors and divine forces. Pottery is often inscribed with ownership labels or descriptions of contents. This is his drinking cup for cacao. Some vessels have long texts recording mythological scenes or historical events. The painted vases found in noble tombs are masterpieces of both art and writing, combining beautiful images with poetic texts. The codices, the bark paper books, contain more specialized knowledge. There are astronomical tables tracking Venus and predicting eclipses. There are almanacs that integrate the 260-day calendar with agricultural and ritual activities, telling you which days are good for planting, for bloodletting, for warfare. There are prophecies, predictions based on calendrical cycles about what will happen in future cartoons. And there are mythological texts, stories of gods and heroes that explain the origins of the cosmos and humanity. Only a few of these codices have survived to the distant future. Most were destroyed by Spanish priests who saw them as works of the devil. But in your time, they're relatively common, housed in temples and noble households, consulted by priests and daykeepers, precious repositories of accumulated knowledge. You've sometimes wondered what it would be like to read these mysterious glyphs, to decode the monuments and understand the histories they contain. But literacy is a privilege reserved for the elite. Your destiny, determined by your birthday, was agriculture, not scholarship. Still, you understand the power of the written word. These glyphs are magic, capable of making thoughts permanent, allowing the dead to speak to the living, ensuring that great deeds aren't forgotten. When a king dies, his monument remains, proclaiming his glory for generations. When a scribe records an astronomical prediction and it comes true, the written record proves the god's favour and the priest's wisdom. Writing is how the Maya conquer time itself, creating permanence in a world of change. But writing can also reveal uncomfortable truths. The monuments record an unbroken chain of victories and divine favour. Yet you're standing here hungry. The rains have failed again, and despite all the glyphs proclaiming eternal glory, something feels like it's ending. The stones will survive still, shouting their messages of triumph long after the voices fall silent. Whether anyone will remain to read them is a question the glyphs themselves cannot answer. The marketplace is a riot of colour, sound and smells, some pleasant, some decidedly not. Vendors are selling everything from obsidian blades to colourful textiles, to live turkeys squawking indignantly in woven cages. And when it's time to pay, you're using cacao beans. That's right, chocolate is literally money. A rabbit costs about 10 beans. A slave, tragically, costs about 100. It's a currency you can eat, which has both advantages and obvious problems. You have to be very careful not to accidentally spend your savings on a moment of weakness when you're craving chocolate. There are even counterfeiters who hollow out cacao beans and fill them with dirt, the ancient equivalent of a bounced check. The Maya economy runs on trade, barter and chocolate, and honestly, modern economists could learn something from that. The marketplace sprawls across a plaza near the residential district, a designated space where commerce happens daily except during major religious festivals. There are no permanent structures, just temporary stalls and mats spread on the ground. Vendors arrive at dawn, carrying their goods on their backs or in dugout canoes if they're coming from distant settlements. By mid-morning, the place is packed with thousands of people, haggling, gossiping, and conducting the business that keeps the city fed and functioning. The organisation is loose but logical. Food vendors cluster together. There are piles of fresh produce, squash, beans, tomatoes, avocados, chili peppers of varying heat levels. Vendors sell prepared foods for people who don't have time to cook. Tamales wrapped in corn husks, tortillas still warm from the griddle, roasted meat on wooden skewers. The smell is intoxicating, making your stomach growl even though you ate before coming. The meat section is more challenging to your senses. Live turkeys and dogs, which the Maya raise for food, are kept in cages, creating a cacophony of sounds and smells. There are haunches of deer and peccary hanging from wooden racks, attracting flies that vendors constantly wave away. Freshwater fish and turtles are displayed in water-filled pottery vessels. The fishmonger is doing brisk business, since fresh protein is always in demand. Beyond food, there's an entire section devoted to textiles. Women vendors display intricately woven cloth in brilliant colours and complex geometric patterns. Some pieces have taken months to create on backstrap looms, each thread individually placed. The prices reflect this labour, with the finest pieces costing hundreds of cacao beans. There are also simpler cloths, plain cotton suitable for everyday wear, which are more affordable. The craft section is endlessly fascinating. Vendors sell pottery in every size and style. Massive storage jars for water or grain, cooking vessels decorated, serving bowls and painted cylindrical vessels meant for drinking chocolate. There are obsidian blades sharper than modern steel, carefully napped from volcanic glass imported from the highlands. Stone tools, grinding stones, jade jewellery, shell ornaments, and feather headdresses are all available if you have the cacao to pay for them. The monetary system is delightfully chaotic. Cacao beans are the primary currency, but they're not standardised. Some beans are larger and of higher quality than others. Vendors and buyers both carry the beans in small cloth bags, counting them out for each transaction. A handful of beans, maybe 5 to 8, can buy you a basic meal. 20 beans might get you a simple pottery bowl. 100 beans is serious money, enough to buy a slave or a month's worth of basic supplies. But cacao beans have a fundamental problem as currency. They're perishable and edible. You can't hoard them for years because they'll dry out and lose value. And if you're truly desperate or just craving chocolate, you might find yourself eating your life savings. This creates an interesting economic pressure towards spending rather than saving, keeping wealth circulating through the economy. Other items serve as currency for larger transactions. Jade beads are valuable and durable. Copper bells, imported from distant regions, are also used for high-value exchanges. Lengths of fine cotton cloth can function as money. The system is flexible, based on mutual agreement and negotiation rather than fixed exchange rates. Every transaction involves haggling. You're here to trade some of your surplus corn for necessities. You approach a vendor selling obsidian blades, since your current blade has dulled from constant use. The vendor, an older man with skilled hands, displays his wares on a woven mat. He has everything from tiny blades for detailed work to large knives suitable for butchering. You pick up a medium-sized blade, testing its weight and sharpness. The edge is so fine it could split a hair. How much, you ask? 30 beans, he replies without hesitation. You scoff. 30? I could buy 3 of these for that in the city across the valley. Then walk to the valley, he suggests calmly. But you're here, and this is the finest obsidian from the Ixtepeque quarries. You counter with 20 beans. He counters with 25. You eventually settle on 23 beans and throw in a small bag of dried chili peppers you brought from your garden. He accepts, and the transaction is complete. You walk away with your new blade. He returns to calling out potential customers, and the market continues its chaotic dance of commerce. Nearby, a commotion erupts. Someone has discovered a counterfeited cacao bean, and the accused vendor is protesting loudly. A market administrator, appointed by the city to maintain order, arrives to mediate. If the vendor is found guilty, he'll be banned from the market and possibly face additional punishment. Counterfeiting currency, even edible currency, is taken seriously. Children weave through the crowds, some helping their parents, others just absorbing the atmosphere. Elderly people sit in the shade watching the commerce and commenting on prices compared to their youth. A travelling merchant from a distant city is creating a sensation with exotic goods. Bright red macaw feathers, jade from the Motagua Valley, and pottery in styles never seen in Tikal. You make a few more purchases. Some salt, precious because there are no local sources, a replacement rope for your hammock, and yes, a small amount of cacao beans for your wife to prepare as a special drink for an upcoming family ceremony. You carefully count out your remaining beans, calculating whether you have enough for everything on your mental list. The marketplace is more than commerce. It's social infrastructure, the place where information spreads faster than anywhere except perhaps the sacred plaza. Here you learn which nobles are in favour, which are falling from grace, which cities are at war, which settlements have good harvests. A trader from the north mentions that the rains failed there too, that their reservoirs are running low. This information travels through the market like ripples on water, adding to the growing sense of unease. As the sun reaches its peak and the heat becomes oppressive, the market activity slows. Vendors seek shade. Some begin packing their goods, having sold their inventory. You head home, your purchases balanced in a net bag on your back, your pouch lighter by several dozen cacao beans. Tomorrow the market will open again, the same vendors in the same spots, the same negotiation dance, the same circulation of edible money keeping the city's economy moving. It's a system that's worked for centuries, as reliable as the sunrise, or at least it was before the rain started failing. The king isn't just a political leader. He's a living god, a bridge between the mortal and divine, worlds. His primary job is to communicate with the gods, interpret their will, and perform the rituals that keep the universe functioning. No pressure. He also has to lead armies, manage the city's food supply, oversee construction projects, and look absolutely fabulous while doing it. The king you're watching right now is wearing a headdress so elaborate it probably weighs more than a small child, and he has to stand perfectly still for hours during ceremonies. Being a divine king is less unlimited power and more unlimited performance anxiety with a side of chronic back pain. If he fails, if the rains don't come or the crops fail, it's not just bad luck. It's divine displeasure, and that's on him. The current king of Tikal is Kinich Muan Jol, though he also uses several other names in different contexts because Maya royal naming conventions are complex enough to require their own guide. He inherited the throne from his father 7 years ago in a ceremony that lasted 3 days, and involved more bloodletting than you care to remember. He was in his late 20s then, vigorous and confident, freshly carved monuments proclaiming his divine right to rule. Now, 7 years later, he looks older than his age, the weight of divine responsibility literally visible in his posture. The King's Day begins before dawn with purification rituals. He's attended by a retinue of servants who help him bathe, dress, and prepare for the morning bloodletting ceremony. Every single day, regardless of whether there's a public ceremony, he must offer blood to the gods. This is non-negotiable. His blood sustains the cosmos. If he stops, the sun might not rise, the rains might not fall, and the entire structure of reality could collapse. At least that's the theology, and he was raised to believe it absolutely. His dwelling is the royal palace, a sprawling complex of rooms built around courtyards, with walls covered in painted stucco showing scenes of his ancestors' glorious victories. He has multiple wives, the primary queen being the daughter of a powerful noble family from a neighbouring city. Their marriage was a political alliance, cementing trade relationships and military cooperation. Whether they actually like each other is irrelevant. They have dynastic responsibilities. The king's schedule is relentless. Public ceremonies require his presence and active participation. He must preside over court, hearing disputes and rendering judgments. Nobles constantly seek his favour, presenting requests for permission to build, to marry, to wage private feuds. Visiting dignitaries from other cities must be received with appropriate pomp. Construction projects on pyramids and temples require his approval and often his physical presence to consecrate new structures. Then there's warfare. As the supreme war chief, he's expected to lead military campaigns personally. This isn't symbolic leadership from the rear. Maya warfare requires the king to be on the front, lines, capturing enemy nobles in hand-to-hand combat. His military prowess is part of his divine legitimacy. A king who never captures enemies loses status and faces challenges to his authority. The carved monuments documenting his reign prominently feature his military victories, showing him standing triumphant with his foot on captive kings from rival cities. The regalia he must wear during public ceremonies is spectacular and torturous in equal measure. The headdress alone is an engineering marvel, a framework of wood and woven material supporting elaborate arrangements of quetzal feathers, jade, shells, and carved bone. It extends 3 feet above his head and weighs 15 to 20 pounds. The headband that secures it is so tight it leaves permanent marks on his forehead. He's trained since childhood to balance this weight, to move gracefully despite the ridiculous top heaviness. His jade collar is a massive piece, multiple strands of carved jade beads interspersed with larger, carved plaques showing gods and glyphs. It weighs several pounds and presses against his collarbones. His jade wrist cuffs and ankle cuffs are similarly substantial. The belt supporting his loincloth is a masterpiece of jade mosaic and woven cloth, so rigid with ornamentation that it's more like wearing a girdle than a belt. And then there are the jade ear spools, massive cylindrical pieces inserted through stretched earlobes that pull constantly with their weight. All of this is before considering the body paint. For major ceremonies, the king is painted from head to toe in sacred designs using pigments that take hours to apply. Blue for the sky and rain gods, red for blood and vitality, black for death and the underworld. The paint is mixed with oils and plant resins that make it sticky and uncomfortable. It doesn't wash off easily, so he goes days between ceremonies with the paint gradually flaking off, looking progressively more dishevelled until the servants scrub him clean for the next ritual. The performance aspect of kingship is exhausting. During ceremonies he must stand motionless for hours while priests chant, while offerings are made, while hundreds or thousands of subjects watch his every movement. Any sign of weakness, any stumble or grimace of pain could be interpreted as divine disfavour. So he stands, sweat running down his painted body, muscles cramping, maintaining the pose of divine authority. And underneath all the spectacle is genuine terror. The king knows what everyone knows, but nobody speaks aloud. The rains are failing. The elaborate water management system, the pride of Tikal's engineers, is struggling. Reservoirs that should be full are half empty. Fields that should be green are brown. Despite all the ceremonies, all the bloodletting, all the perfectly executed rituals, the gods seem to be withdrawing their favour. This creates an impossible situation. If the king admits that the rituals aren't working, he undermines his own authority. If he claims everything is fine when people are going hungry, he loses credibility. So he does the only thing he can, performs the rituals with even more dedication, bleeds even more frequently, builds new monuments proclaiming divine favour, and desperately hopes that this will be the ceremony. This will be the sacrifice that finally brings the rains. His advisors whisper suggestions, perhaps a more elaborate ceremony, perhaps a campaign against a rival city to capture more prestigious sacrifices, perhaps consultation with priests from other cities who might know rituals that Tikal has forgotten. The king listens to all of this while maintaining the serene, confident expression expected of a divine ruler. In private, late at night when the servants have withdrawn, he's just a man in his 30s with chronic pain from wearing 20 pounds of jade and an ulcer from stress. He worries about his children, about whether his oldest son will be able to maintain the throne after he dies. He worries about food supplies, about the grumbling he hears from nobles and commoners alike. He worries that he's the king who will be remembered for losing divine favour, for presiding over decline. But in public, at dawn, he emerges from the palace dressed in full regalia, climbs the steep steps of the temple, and performs the bloodletting ritual with steady hands. The crowd watches, the priests chant, the sacred smoke rises, and the king plays his role in the cosmic drama, because what else can he do? He was born to this. His name was carved into the dynastic sequence before he could walk. The ancestors are watching, the gods are watching, and everyone, from the highest noble to the lowest farmer, is depending on him to keep the universe functioning. It's a terrible responsibility for anyone, let alone a human being who bleeds and hurts and doubts like everyone else. But he wears the jade and the feathers, stands in the sun, and maintains the divine performance because the alternative, admitting that the king is just a man and the rituals might be failing, is unthinkable. So he continues, day after day, ceremony after ceremony, bleeding for gods who seem increasingly distant. Being a divine king isn't a privilege. It's a burden that's slowly crushing him, one elaborate headdress at a time. Maya warfare is different from what you might expect. The goal isn't to annihilate the enemy, It's to capture high-ranking prisoners, preferably nobles, for sacrifice. Killing someone on the battlefield is fine, but capturing them alive, that's the real victory. Warriors wear elaborate costumes designed to terrify the enemy, jaguar pelts, massive feathered headdresses and face paint that makes them look like supernatural beings. Battles are brutal, but often relatively short because fighting in full, ceremonial armour in jungle heat is exhausting. You watch as a victorious war party returns, dragging bound captives who will be paraded through the city before their ritual sacrifice. It's a grim reminder that in Maya civilization, religion and violence are thoroughly intertwined, like two threads in the same piece of cloth. The war party has been gone for 3 weeks, and today they return. You hear them before you see them. Drums beating a victory rhythm, conch shell trumpets blaring, and the collective roar of voices raised in triumph. The entire city pours into the plaza to witness the return. This is spectacle, religious ceremony, and political theatre all combined into one event. The warriors enter first, and they are transformed. These are men you know from daily life, farmers and craftsmen like yourself, but now they look like creatures from mythology. Their faces are painted in fierce designs, red and black stripes, skull motifs, jaguar spots. They wear cotton armour, thick quilted tunics that provide surprising protection against clubs and spears. Over this they've added their most terrifying elements: jaguar pelts with the animals' heads, warners' helmets, massive headdresses featuring owl feathers, owls being associated with death and the underworld, or elaborate wooden back racks carved and painted to make them appear gigantic and supernatural. They carry their weapons, wooden clubs edged with razor-sharp obsidian blades called makuahuitl, atlatls for launching darts with deadly accuracy, and shields decorated with symbols of their patron gods. Many bear fresh wounds, arms bound with cloth-stained red, limping from injured legs, but still standing proud. The walking wounded are celebrated. Visible injuries prove their courage and dedication. Behind the warriors come the captives, and this is what the crowd has really gathered to see. There are 7 prisoners, all bound with rope, their hands tied behind their backs, connected to each other by a cord around their necks. They've been stripped of their finery, reduced to simple loincloths, their faces showing the terror of men who know exactly what fate awaits them. These aren't random prisoners. They're nobles from the enemy city, identifiable by their stretched earlobes where jade spools once hung, by the scars of royal bloodletting on their tongues, by their bearing even in defeat. The most important captive, dragged at the front of the line, is the enemy city's war chief. He's middle-aged, muscular, and despite everything maintains a defiant expression. His capture is the crowning achievement of the campaign. A carved monument is probably already being planned to commemorate this moment, showing Tikal's king with his foot on this man's back. The procession circles the plaza 3 times, allowing everyone to see the captives. Children run alongside, shouting insults. Women ululate, the high-pitched sound expressing both joy and something darker. The captives are forced to look up at the pyramids and temples of Tikal, to witness the power of the city that has defeated them. This psychological warfare is intentional, breaking their spirit before the final ritual. The king emerges from the palace in full ceremonial regalia. He's carried on a litter by servants, elevated above everyone, the living god greeting his victorious warriors. The war party leader approaches, kneels, and presents the captured war chief. The king doesn't speak. He simply nods, accepting the offering. The crowd roars approval. What follows is ritual humiliation. The captives are brought to the center of the plaza, where they're forced to perform dances for the entertainment of the crowd. They're not killed yet, that would waste the sacred potential of their blood, but they're tormented. Commoners throw refuse at them. Children poke them with sticks. The psychological torture is part of the ritual, breaking down their identity, reducing them from nobles to objects of sacrifice. This process will continue for days. The captives will be kept in cages, fed minimally, displayed publicly. Priests will perform divination to determine the most auspicious day for their sacrifice. The captured war chief will be saved for a major ceremony, possibly months from now during an important calendrical event. The lesser nobles might be sacrificed sooner, during smaller rituals. You watch all this with complex emotions. There's genuine pride in Tikal's victory. Your city has proven its power, captured prestigious enemies, and will offer valuable sacrifices to the gods. The warriors who participated will gain status, perhaps earning titles, definitely earning respect. Successful warriors are celebrated, given better access to goods, more desirable marriage opportunities, and social mobility otherwise unavailable to commoners. But there's also an undercurrent of unease. War is expensive. These warriors were away from their fields for 3 weeks during a critical period in the agricultural cycle. The logistics of feeding and equipping a war party strain resources, and Tikal's enemy, though defeated this time, will surely seek revenge. This victory might spark a cycle of retaliation that could last for years or even generations. Maya warfare isn't total war. Cities aren't destroyed. Populations aren't enslaved en masse. The goal is to capture prestigious prisoners, perhaps exact tribute, and establish dominance. But it's warfare nonetheless, with all the death, injury, and disruption that entails. The jungle swallows the dead quickly, leaving no trace of the battles fought beneath the canopy. The only permanent record will be the carved monuments and the nightmares of those who were there. The warrior class is relatively small and specialized. Most Maya are farmers, not fighters. But every able-bodied man is expected to serve if called. You've been on one campaign yourself years ago, and the memory still troubles your sleep. The combination of terror, exhaustion, and violence compressed into a few hours of chaos left marks that don't show on your body, but are definitely present in your mind. The captured nobles will face a death that's both honoured and horrific. During the sacrifice ceremony, probably at the top of the highest pyramid, priests will spread them across a stone altar. The king or the high priest will use an obsidian blade to cut open their chest, reach in and extract the still beating heart, holding it aloft for the gods. It's the most sacred act in Maya religion, the ultimate gift, returning life force to the gods who gave life to humans. From the gods' perspective, according to theology, this is proper and necessary. The gods sacrifice themselves to create the current world. Humans made from corn must return the favour, maintaining cosmic balance through offerings of blood and life. The captives, despite their terror, are participating in the most important religious ritual possible. Their deaths have meaning, ensuring the sun continues to rise, the rains eventually fall, and the universe doesn't collapse into chaos. From the captive's perspective, it's a nightmare. They'll die far from home. Their bodies never return to their families, their names recorded as defeated enemies on Tikal's monuments. Whatever they believed about honour and sacrifice, the reality of being tied to an altar while a priest approaches with an obsidian blade must overwhelm any theological comfort. The procession ends. The captives are dragged to holding cells. The warriors disperse to their homes where they'll be celebrated by their families. The king returns to the palace. The crowd gradually disperses, buzzing with conversation about the victory, analysing every detail, speculating about the coming sacrifice ceremony. You head home, the image of the bound captives stuck in your mind. In a few months, it could be you. If Tikal loses the next campaign, if you're unlucky or brave enough to be captured, War is a lottery where the prizes are status and glory, but the potential cost is your beating heart held aloft for enemy gods. It's a system that's worked for centuries, encoding religious belief and political power into ritualized violence. But like everything else in your world, it's built on the assumption that the gods are pleased, that the rituals work, that the universe continues to function according to the established patterns, and that assumption is feeling increasingly fragile. After a long day of grinding corn and working in the fields, you head to the Temazcal, a traditional Maya sweat bath. It's a small stone structure with a low entrance, and inside, heated stones create intense steam. This isn't just about getting clean, it's a spiritual purification ritual. The Maya believed that sweat released impurities from both body and soul. You sit in the near darkness, sweating profusely, while someone pours water infused with medicinal herbs over the hot stones. It's part spa, part religious ceremony, and entirely claustrophobic. But when you finally emerge, dizzy and drenched, you feel genuinely renewed. It's one of the few moments of pure relaxation available to you, and you savour it, because tomorrow you'll be back to grinding corn at dawn. The Temazcal sits at the edge of your residential compound, a small domed structure built from stone and covered with layers of mud plaster. From the outside, it looks like an oversized beehive or a miniature pyramid. The entrance is deliberately low, barely 3 feet high, forcing you to crawl in on your hands and knees. This isn't poor design, it's intentional. The act of crawling represents humility, returning to the womb, shedding your everyday identity before entering this sacred space. Inside, the structure is surprisingly spacious, about 10 feet in diameter with a domed ceiling just tall enough to sit upright but not stand. The floor is beaten earth, and in the centre is a shallow pit filled with stones. These stones, river rocks carefully selected for their ability to retain heat, have been heating in an outdoor fire for hours. They glow with residual heat, radiating warmth that's already making the enclosed space uncomfortably hot. You're not alone. The Temazcal is a communal experience. Your uncle is here, nursing a persistent cough that he hopes the steam will help. Your cousin's wife is present, pregnant and seeking relief from body aches. An elderly neighbour uses the Temazcal to ease his chronic joint pain. Everyone sits along the curved walls, their bodies quickly beginning to glisten with sweat in the oppressive heat. Your wife's mother serves as the Temazcal attendant tonight, a role that requires knowledge of herbs and ritual. She sits near the entrance, positioned to control the temperature and intensity of the steam. Beside her are clay vessels filled with water, infused with medicinal plants. Epazote for digestive issues, basil for fever, marigold for skin ailments, and more obscure plants whose names you don't know, but whose effects have been proven over generations. She begins the ceremony with a prayer, addressing the Temazcal itself as a living entity. The structure is considered a goddess, a womb-like space where people are reborn through purification. She asks permission to use the space, requests healing for those present, and calls on the spirits of healing plants to work their medicine. Then she takes a gourd dipper, fills it with the herbal water and pours it over the glowing stones. The effect is immediate and dramatic. The water hits the superheated rocks with a hiss, instantly transforming into steam that rises and fills the enclosed space. The temperature spikes. The air becomes thick, almost liquid, difficult to breathe. The herbal scent, sharp and medicinal, fills your lungs. Your skin prickles, then begins releasing sweat in quantities that seem impossible. Within seconds, you're drenched. This is the point. The intense heat and humidity force your body to sweat profusely, releasing what the Maya understand as impurities. Modern science would explain this as opening pores, increasing circulation, and providing some detoxification through the skin. The Maya understood it as cleansing the body's chulel, the sacred life force that animates all living things. Illness was often viewed as an imbalance or contamination of this life force, and sweating it out was literal medicine. The attendant controls the experience with expert timing. She pours water over the stones in waves, building heat, then allowing it to stabilize. Too much steam too fast and people could pass out or burn their lungs. Too little, and the therapeutic effect is diminished. She's learned this knowledge from her mother, who learned it from her mother, an unbroken chain of women maintaining this healing tradition. Between steam waves, people talk quietly. Your uncle discusses his fields, expressing worry about the declining rainfall. Your cousin's wife mentions feeling the baby move. The elderly neighbour tells a story about using the temazcal as a young man, how it healed a persistent fever that threatened his life. These conversations in the darkness, voices disembodied, create an intimacy different from normal social interaction. The temazcal strips away social pretense. Everyone is naked, sweating, vulnerable. Status distinctions fade in the steam. The Maya believed the temazcal was particularly important for women, especially during pregnancy and after childbirth. Pregnant women used it to ease the physical burden of carrying a child. After birth, both mother and newborn would be brought to the temazcal for ritual purification and to help the mother's body recover. The intense heat was thought to close the womb, restore balance, and protect against malevolent spirits attracted to the vulnerable state of new mothers. Warriors used the temazcal before and after campaigns. Before, to purify and prepare spiritually for the coming violence. After, to cleanse away the spiritual contamination of killing and to heal physical injuries. The heat increased circulation, promoting healing of wounds. The herbal infusions could be targeted to specific injuries, with different plants known for treating different conditions. Time becomes difficult to track in the temazcal. The combination of heat, darkness, and sensory deprivation creates a trance-like state. Some people report visions or encounters with spirits while in the most intense steam. Whether these are genuine spiritual experiences or hallucinations caused by heat stress and oxygen deprivation, the Maya make no distinction. The spiritual and physical are inseparable. After what might be 20 minutes or might be an hour, the attendant announces the session is ending. She stops pouring water and the temperature gradually begins to drop. People start to emerge, crawling out through the low entrance back into the evening air. The contrast is shocking. The outside air, even in tropical humidity, feels cool and refreshing after the intense heat. You stand on shaky legs, dizzy, wrung out like a twisted cloth, every drop of water seemingly extracted from your body. There's a vessel of cool water waiting, and you drink deeply, replacing some of what you've sweated out. Your skin is bright red from the heat, tingling, feeling more alive than it has in days. The aches from a day spent bent over in the fields have diminished. Your mind feels clearer, the constant worries temporarily quieted. The ritual isn't quite complete. Some people, particularly those seeking healing for specific conditions, will be brushed with branches of medicinal plants, the attendant ritually sweeping away illness. Others might receive a massage with herbal oils. Eventually you'll go home, wrap yourself in a clean cotton cloth, and likely fall into the deepest sleep you've had in weeks. The temazcal is one of the most genuinely therapeutic institutions in Maya life. In a world without modern medicine, where illness can quickly become life-threatening, this combination of heat therapy, medicinal plants, and spiritual cleansing provides real benefit. It's preventive medicine, treating small problems before they become large ones. But it's also a luxury that requires resources. The temazcal needs constant maintenance. The structure must be replastered regularly. Wood for the fire must be gathered. Medicinal plants must be cultivated or foraged. In increasingly difficult times with drought affecting everything, even this small comfort is becoming harder to maintain. Some families have stopped using their temazcal to conserve firewood. Others continue, viewing it as essential rather than optional, a necessary investment in health, even when resources are scarce. As you walk home in the gathering darkness, still feeling the glow of heat on your skin, you're grateful for this moment of respite. Tomorrow will bring the same struggles, the grinding corn, the uncertain fields, the constant worry about whether the rains will come. But tonight, for a few hours, you felt clean, renewed, connected to something larger than your daily struggles. The temazcal, like so much in Maya life, is practical medicine wrapped in sacred meaning, physical healing inseparable from spiritual cleansing. And in this moment, still dizzy from the steam, you'll take whatever comfort you can get. You're sick. Maybe it's a fever, maybe it's an infected cut, or maybe you just ate something that deeply disagreed with you. So you visit the airman, the healer. He's part doctor, part priest, and part psychologist. He examines you, asks about your dreams, consults the sacred calendar to determine which day gods might be angry with you, and then prescribes a treatment that's equal parts practical medicine and magical ritual. He might give you an herbal poultice made from plants with genuine medicinal properties. He might also perform a ceremony to appease offended spirits. The Maya understanding of medicine is surprisingly sophisticated. They knew about setting bones, treating infections, even performing basic surgery, but it's always wrapped in layers of religious belief. Because in the Maya world, there's no separation between physical and spiritual illness. They're the same thing. The Amun's dwelling is easy to identify. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters, filling the air with a complex aromatic mixture. Clay vessels line the walls containing prepared remedies, powders, and oils. Animal bones, not from food waste but carefully preserved specimens, are arranged for divination. Carved stone figures of healing deities occupy places of honour. The space smells of smoke, plants, and something medicinal you can't quite identify. The healer himself is an older man, perhaps 60, which is genuinely old in a society where many people don't survive past 40. His survival to this age is itself evidence of his expertise. He can't be a bad healer and live this long. He wears simple clothes but multiple jade beads around his neck, gifts from grateful patients. His hands are gnarled from decades of grinding herbs and manipulating injured limbs, but they move with practiced confidence. You explain your symptoms: persistent fever, weakness, a cough that's been getting progressively worse over the past week. He listens carefully, not just to your words, but observing how you move, the colour of your skin, the quality of your breath. His diagnostic process is holistic, taking in information from multiple sources simultaneously. First, he consults the calendar. What day were you born? What day did the illness begin? He performs quick mental calculations, determining the relationship between these dates and the current position in the 260-day cycle. Certain illnesses are associated with specific day gods. If you became sick on a day ruled by a death god, that's significant. If your birthday is incompatible with the current illness day, that suggests supernatural causes rather than purely physical ones. Next, he asks about your dreams. Have you dreamed of caves, of water, of deceased, relatives? The Maya believe dreams are portals where the soul travels and communicates with the spirit world. Certain dreams can predict illness or explain its spiritual causes. If you dreamed of swimming in an underground river, that might indicate the water gods require an offering. If you dreamed of an angry ancestor, you might have offended their memory somehow. He examines your body with surprising thoroughness. He feels your forehead for fever using the back of his hand. He presses on your abdomen, noting where you flinch. He examines your tongue, your eyes, the colour under your fingernails. These physical diagnostic techniques have been refined over generations, passed from master to apprentice in an unbroken chain of practical knowledge. Finally, he performs divination. He takes a handful of dried corn kernels, the seeds that are both food and sacred substance, and tosses them on a woven mat. The pattern they form provides additional information. Alternatively, he might use small carved stones, crystals found in caves, or other objects traditional to his practice. The specific method varies between healers, but the goal is the same, determining the spiritual dimension of your illness. After this multi-layered diagnostic process, he announces his conclusion. You have an imbalance of heat and cold in your body, aggravated by offending a cave spirit when you urinated near a sacred cenote last month. The physical symptoms are real, but they have a spiritual cause. Treatment must address both dimensions simultaneously. The physical treatment is practical and effective. He prepares an infusion of various medicinal plants. You recognize some. Tobacco leaves for their medicinal properties, not smoking. Guava leaves known to reduce fever. The bark of certain trees with anti-inflammatory properties. Others are unknown to you, part of the healer's specialized knowledge. He boils these ingredients, creating a tea that smells terrible and tastes worse, but which you drink obediently. He prepares a poultice for your chest, mashing plants into a paste mixed with rendered animal fat. This is applied directly to your skin, warm and somewhat soothing. He wraps it with cloth to hold it in place. The heat and medicinal properties of the plants will be absorbed through your skin while you sleep. Then comes the spiritual treatment. He announces you need to make an offering to the cave spirits to appease your offence. This requires you to travel to the cenote, bring specific items, copal incense, cacao beans, perhaps a small carved jade bead if you have one, and perform a ritual of apology. He provides detailed instructions, the time of day, the prayers to recite, the specific actions to perform. Additionally, he performs a cleansing ritual right here in his dwelling. Using a bundle of fresh herbs, he sweeps your body from head to toe, ritually brushing away the spiritual contamination causing your illness. He chants in a mixture of everyday Maya and archaic ritual language that you don't fully understand. The herbs are then taken outside and burned, carrying away the extracted illness. This combination of treatments addresses multiple dimensions of your condition. The herbal medicine has genuine pharmacological effects. Many Maya medicinal plants contain compounds that modern science recognizes as effective: antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, analgesic. The healer doesn't know the biochemistry, but centuries of observation and experimentation have identified which plants work for which conditions. The ritual elements address the psychological and spiritual dimensions. The act of making an offering, of performing specific actions to rectify an offence, provides a sense of agency and control. You're not passively suffering, you're actively working toward healing. This psychological component shouldn't be underestimated. Belief in treatment efficacy is itself therapeutic. What modern medicine recognizes as the placebo effect, but the Maya would simply call proper spiritual practice. The Amen's knowledge extends beyond herbal remedies. He can set broken bones, aligning them properly and creating splints from wood and cloth. He can stitch wounds using agave fibre as thread and bone needles, closing deep cuts that might otherwise become fatally infected. He can drain abscesses, lance boils, and remove infected teeth, all without anaesthesia beyond perhaps some alcohol or drugs to dull the pain. For more serious conditions, his expertise has limits. Internal injuries, diseases affecting organs, severe infections, these often prove fatal despite his best efforts. The Maya have no concept of germ theory, no antibiotics, no understanding of viruses. When epidemics sweep through the city, probably influenza or other diseases, though you have no names for them, the Amen can do little but prepare the dying for the afterlife journey through Xibalba. Still, for routine ailments, injuries, and common illnesses, his success rate is probably better than you'd expect. The combination of effective herbal medicine and psychological support helps many patients recover, and for those who don't, he provides comfort and meaning, explaining illness as part of cosmic patterns rather than random misfortune. The consultation ends with payment. You offer him several cacao beans and a promise to bring fresh produce from your next harvest. He accepts graciously, never directly demanding payment but expecting it nonetheless. Healing is his profession, and like any professional, he needs to support his family. You leave with your herbal tea, your poultice, and detailed instructions for the ritual offering. Whether the treatment will work depends on your perspective. The modern scientific mind would attribute any recovery to the pharmacologically active compounds in the medicinal plants. The Maya mind attributes it to the proper balance of physical treatment and spiritual correction. From your position, lying in your hammock that night, chest warm with the poultice, stomach churning from the bitter tea, you don't particularly care which explanation is correct. You just want to stop coughing and return to work. The fields don't care about theology, they just need tending. And you need to be healthy enough to tend them however the healing happens. Everyone knows the story of the hero twins. It's told around fires, painted on pottery, and carved into temple walls. The twins, Hunahpu and Exbalanque, were summoned to the underworld, Xibalba, by the death gods who were annoyed by the noise of their ball game. The underworld isn't just death. It's a realm of tests, tricks, and terrifying gods with names like Puss Master and Bloody Teeth. The twins had to survive the House of Darkness, the House of Knives, the House of Cold, the House of Jaguars, and the House of Fire. They outwitted the death gods through cleverness and sacrifice, eventually transforming into the sun and moon. It's the ultimate story of triumph over death, and it shapes the entire Maya understanding of sacrifice, bull games, and the afterlife. When you die, you're not hoping for heaven. You're hoping to successfully navigate Xibalba without being tricked by gods who literally have blood in their names. The story begins with the twins' father and uncle, also great ball players, who were summoned to Xibalba before them. These first heroes were less clever, falling for the death god's tricks and ultimately being killed and buried under the ball court. But before dying, the father's head was hung in a calabash tree as a warning. When a young woman passed by, the head spat in her hand, magically impregnating her with the hero twins. This bizarre beginning sets the tone for a story that's equal parts epic and deeply strange. The twins grow up knowing their destiny. They become skilled ball players, practicing constantly, and eventually the death gods, annoyed by the noise echoing into their underworld realm, send messengers to summon them. The twins accept, knowing this is their chance to avenge their father and uncle. They descend into Xibalba, travelling down a steep path into the earth, crossing rivers of scorpions, blood and pus, each river a test of courage and determination. Xibalba is a nightmare realm of dark palaces and darker intentions. The death gods are named with gleeful horror. 1 death and 7 death are the lords. Below them are Puss Master, Jaundice Master, Bone Scepter, Skull Scepter, Wing, Packstrap, Bloody Teeth, and Bloody Claws. These aren't metaphorical figures. In Maya belief, these are real entities who cause specific forms of death and disease in the upper world. They're not evil exactly. They're forces of nature personified, death and decay made conscious and given personality. The tests begin immediately. The twins are invited to sit on a bench, which turns out to be a heated stone designed to burn them. They recognise the trick and refuse. They're offered cigars and told to Keep them lit all night without consuming them. The twins attach fireflies to the tips, creating the illusion of burning tobacco while preserving the actual cigars. Test after test, the twins use intelligence rather than strength to survive. The House of Darkness is completely lightless, filled with unknown dangers. The twins survive by carrying torches and staying alert. The House of Knives is filled with obsidian blades that fly through the air, attempting to cut them to pieces. They calm the knives with promises, convincing them to remain still. The House of Cold is supernaturally freezing, designed to make them succumb to hypothermia. They create fire and huddle together for warmth. The House of Jaguars is full of hungry cats. They distract the jaguars by throwing them bones to gnaw. The House of Fire is exactly what it sounds like, but they survive through clever use of water and positioning. These trials are more than adventure story elements. They're a map of what every Maya soul will face after death. When you die, you don't go to a paradise or hell in the Christian sense. You go to Xibalba, and you must navigate its challenges to reach transformation and rebirth. The trials test different aspects of character: courage, intelligence, perseverance, respect for the gods, and clever thinking. The climax of the story comes when the twins challenge the death gods to a ball game, echoing their father's fate. But unlike their father, the twins are prepared. They allow themselves to be killed and burned, their ashes scattered in a river. But being heroes of mythological importance, they're reborn 5 days later as catfish, then as humans again. When they reveal themselves to the death gods and demonstrate their power over death itself, the lords of Xibalba are amazed and frightened. The twins then trick the death gods into being sacrificed themselves. They perform a demonstration, killing and resurrecting each other, making it seem like an entertaining magic trick. The death gods, greedy for power, demand to be killed and resurrected too. The twins oblige with the killing part but skip the resurrection, permanently reducing the power of death over humanity. Finally, the twins transform. Hunahpu becomes the sun, rising each morning to illuminate the world. Xbalanque becomes the moon, following his brother across the sky. Their journey from life to death to rebirth establishes the cosmic pattern that all existence follows. The sun dies each evening, journeys through Xibalba at night, and is reborn at dawn. Death isn't an ending, it's a transformation. This story profoundly shapes Maya culture. The ball game is understood as ritual reenactment of the twins' contest with death. Every match symbolically plays out the cosmic struggle. Players who die or are sacrificed after games aren't simply killed, they're following the path of the hero twins, transforming from human to sacred offering. The story also explains why human sacrifice is necessary. The gods literally gave up their lives to create the current world. The twins sacrificed themselves to overcome death. Humans must reciprocate through sacrifice, maintaining cosmic balance. Blood offerings and human hearts aren't grotesque violations. They're participating in the same pattern of death and transformation that created the universe. For you, standing in the plaza watching priests perform ceremonies, or lying in your hammock at night thinking about mortality, the story of the hero twins provides framework and meaning. Death is coming for everyone, that's certain. But death isn't final. It's a journey through Xibalba, a test of your character and cleverness, and if you're wise and brave like the twins, if you've lived properly and the rituals have been performed correctly, you'll navigate the trials and achieve transformation. Of course, most people aren't hero twins. Most people are ordinary, which makes the prospect of navigating Xibalba's horrors terrifying. The death gods are tricksters who delight in fooling the dead. The trials are genuinely dangerous. Many souls presumably fail, though the mythology doesn't dwell on what happens to failures. This creates an undercurrent of anxiety around death, an understanding that your journey isn't over when your heart stops, it's just beginning, and the next phase might be even worse than this one. The story is told and retold in countless contexts. Mothers tell it to children as bedtime stories, though it probably gives them nightmares. Priests recite it during funerals, reminding mourners that the deceased is now travelling the path the twins pioneered. Artists paint it on pottery and carve it into temple walls, creating permanent visual reminders of the cosmic patterns governing existence. And when you're old, lying on your mat knowing death is approaching, you'll think about the hero twins. You'll remember their cleverness, their courage, their transformation. You'll hope that when you descend into Sibalba, when you face Puss Master and Bloody Teeth and all the rest, you'll have the wisdom and strength to pass the tests. The story doesn't promise easy salvation. It promises that death is navigable, that transformation is possible, and that even in the darkest underworld, clever humanity can triumph. It's not much of a comfort, but in a world where death is common and often sudden, it's the comfort you have. So you hold on to the story, let it shape your understanding, and hope that when your time comes, you'll prove as resourceful as two legendary twins who turn death itself into just another obstacle to overcome. Chocolate in the Maya world isn't the sweet treat you know. It's a bitter, frothy drink reserved for nobles and special occasions. Cacao beans are roasted, ground into a paste, mixed with water, chili peppers, and sometimes corn, and then poured back and forth between vessels to create foam. The foam is the best part, the divine part. Drinking chocolate is a drinking ritual, not a casual snack. It's served in elaborate painted cups, and the act of drinking it is associated with power, divinity, and transformation. The gods themselves drink chocolate. If you're a commoner, you might taste it once or twice in your entire life, usually at a major ceremony. It's less afternoon pick-me-up and more liquid currency you occasionally get to consume in sacred contexts. And honestly, after trying it, with its bitter, spicy punch, you're not entirely sure what all the fuss is about. Today is your daughter's marriage ceremony, which means your family is preparing chocolate for the guests. This is a significant expense, requiring you to spend 30 precious cacao beans from your carefully hoarded supply. But tradition demands it. A marriage ceremony without chocolate is like a ball game without a ball, technically possible, but fundamentally incomplete. The preparation begins days earlier. The cacao beans, which you've been saving for exactly this occasion, are stored in a clay vessel sealed with a cloth. Your wife opens the container and spreads the beans on a flat stone surface to inspect them. Some are plump and good. Others have dried out or show signs of insect damage. These inferior beans get set aside. They're still currency, but not suitable for drinking. The first step is roasting. A large flat clay griddle, the same comal used for making tortillas, is heated over the fire. The selected beans are spread across the hot surface and constantly stirred with a wooden paddle. The roasting process is critical. Too little, and the beans remain raw and bitter. Too much, and they burn, ruining the entire batch. The smell as they roast is intoxicating, deep, rich, slightly nutty. It fills your dwelling and announces to the entire neighbourhood that something special is happening. As the beans roast, their papery shells crack and loosen. Once roasting's complete, the hot beans are poured into a basket and vigorously shaken, allowing the lighter shells to blow away while the heavier roasted nibs remain. This winnowing process takes surprising effort and skill, requiring just the right wrist motion to separate shell from bean without losing the valuable nibs. The roasted nibs are then placed on a grinding stone, a metate specifically reserved for chocolate preparation. Using a stone roller, your wife begins the laborious process of grinding. Unlike corn, which is softened by boiling before grinding, cacao is ground completely dry and hard. The friction generates heat, and as she grinds the cacao's natural fat, the cocoa butter begins to melt. The dry nibs gradually transform into a thick, oily paste. This grinding can take hours. Your wife's arms tremble with effort. Her back aches from the bent position. But she continues, occasionally adding a roasted corn kernel to the paste, which provides body and helps thicken the final drink. Some chocolate preparations include spices, ground chili peppers for heat, vanilla if you're wealthy enough, or achiote for colour. Your family's recipe is simple: cacao, corn, and a small amount of chili. The gods don't need fancy additions to appreciate your offering. Once the paste reaches the proper consistency, thick and smooth, it's ready for mixing. This is where chocolate preparation becomes performance. Your wife takes a portion of the paste and dissolves it in water inside a tall cylindrical vessel. Then comes the crucial step, creating the foam. She pours the liquid chocolate from the tall vessel into a wide bowl, held at arm's length, creating a long stream. Then she pours it back from bowl to vessel, back and forth, over and over. The liquid froths and bubbles. Foam begins to form, light and airy, floating on the surface of the drink. This foam, called the head of the chocolate, is considered the most divine part. When gods drink chocolate, they consume the foam, leaving the liquid for lesser beings. The physical effort required for this pouring is substantial. Your wife's arms strain. Occasionally she misjudges and the stream breaks, splashing chocolate everywhere, which is basically watching currency spill on the floor. But eventually she achieves the perfect pour, the liquid arcing smoothly, the foam building into a thick, creamy layer. The prepared chocolate is poured into decorated cylindrical vessels, each painted with elaborate scenes of gods, ceremonies, or mythology. These vessels are not everyday items. They're special possessions, inherited through generations or acquired at significant expense. Some even have hieroglyphic text painted on them proclaiming their purpose: his chocolate cup or for drinking cacao. During the marriage ceremony, the chocolate is served to guests in order of status. The bride and groom receive the first cups, drinking together while elders chant blessings. Then nobles and family heads are served. Finally, if enough remains, commoners receive small portions. You're handed a cup, the painted cylinder warm. In your hands, the chocolate aroma rising with the steam. You take a ritual sip. The flavour is shocking if you've been expecting sweetness. It's intensely bitter, with an earthy complexity that coats your tongue. The chili provides heat that builds gradually, making your eyes water. The texture is slightly gritty despite the grinding, with that prized foam dissolving into a creamy richness. It's definitely an acquired taste, more medicine than pleasure, more ritual than refreshment. But here's what makes it special: the effect. Cacao contains theobromine and caffeine, stimulants that create a mild euphoric sensation. After drinking, you feel more alert, more energized, slightly elevated. Combined with the ritual context, the decorated vessels, the ceremony, the rarity, drinking chocolate becomes a transcendent experience. You're consuming the food of gods, literally incorporating divinity into your body. The gods' relationship with chocolate is documented throughout Maya art and mythology. The maize god drinks chocolate. The creator deities serve it at divine councils. When humans were created from maize dough, chocolate was part of the sacred recipe. To drink chocolate is to temporarily bridge the gap between human and divine, to taste what immortals taste, to share in the substance that fuels the cosmos. For you, this marriage ceremony chocolate might be the only time this year you taste it. The 30 beans you spent represent weeks of agricultural surplus, carefully saved and not eaten despite temptations. Was it worth it? The religious answer is absolutely yes. The gods were honoured, the ceremony was proper, The community witnessed your family's ability to meet social obligations. Your daughter's marriage begins with divine blessing, quite literally, dissolved in chocolate. The practical answer is more complex. 30 cacao beans could have bought other things: tools, cloth, supplemental food during the increasingly frequent hungry months, but not serving chocolate would have been a scandal, a public admission of poverty and failure. Social obligations aren't optional, even when resources are scarce. As the ceremony continues and the chocolate circulates, you watch nobles drinking multiple cups, their status allowing them to consume freely what you ration carefully. Some nobles drink chocolate daily, sometimes multiple times per day. For them, it's not a rare treat but an expected part of life, like tortillas for commoners. This disparity is just another way status manifests. Some people eat chocolate like bread while others treat it like jewels. The empty chocolate vessels are carefully washed and stored away. Not a drop is wasted. Any remaining paste is saved for another occasion. The cacao shells winnowed away earlier aren't discarded either. They can be used for a simpler, less potent chocolate drink for household consumption, extracting every bit of value from these precious beans. Later, lying in your hammock, you still taste the chocolate, bitter and complex, lingering on your tongue. Your stomach feels slightly unsettled from the richness, your body unused to such concentrated flavour. But there's also that stimulant energy, making sleep difficult despite your exhaustion. You're wired on divine food, vibrating at a slightly higher frequency than normal human existence. And that's chocolate in the Maya world. Its currency, religious offering, status symbol, and occasional intoxicant all combined into one bitter, foamy drink that gods love and commoners endure. The Aztecs would later demand it as tribute. The Spanish would eventually add sugar and transform it into the treat the modern world knows. But here, now, in the heart of the Maya world, chocolate is serious business, too valuable to waste, too sacred to casually consume, and after tasting it, you're honestly fine with that arrangement. And so, our journey through the Maya world comes to a close. You've woken up in Tikal at the height of its power. You've ground corn until your arms ached, watched pyramids rise stone by stone, witnessed kings bleed for the gods, and felt the creeping dread as the rains failed year after year. You've lived through the impossible brilliance of a civilization that built white stone cities in the jungle without metal tools or wheeled carts, that calculated astronomical cycles with breathtaking precision, that created a writing system capable of recording poetry and prophecy. And you've felt the slow, terrible realization that even the most sophisticated civilization is still at the mercy of forces beyond its control. The Maya didn't fail because they were primitive or foolish. They failed because they were human. They pushed their environment to its limits and then beyond. They built a system so complex and magnificent that it required everything to work perfectly, and when the climate shifted, when the rains became unreliable, the whole elaborate structure began to crack. The kings bled more, desperately. The priests performed more elaborate ceremonies. The monuments proclaimed louder victories, but none of it could make the rain fall or the corn grow in depleted soil. What happened next, in the century after our story ends, was neither sudden apocalypse nor simple abandonment. It was a long, complicated unravelling. Some cities collapsed quickly, others persisted for decades, adapting and surviving in diminished forms. People didn't vanish, they moved, migrated to areas with better water, dispersed into smaller communities that the environment could sustain. The great pyramid cities fell silent, but the Maya people continued, carrying their language, their knowledge, their stories into new forms. The ruins we can visit today, Tikal, Palenque, Copan, are monuments to both triumph and tragedy. They're proof that humans can achieve the extraordinary, building civilizations of stunning sophistication in the most challenging environments. But they're also reminders that no amount of human brilliance can indefinitely overcome environmental limits, that civilizations are fragile things, dependent on factors beyond their control. And here's what might keep you up tonight. We're not so different. We've built our own elaborate civilization, dependent on complex systems all working perfectly. We're watching our own climate change, our own resources strain, our own leaders perform increasingly desperate rituals, though we call them summits and agreements instead of bloodletting ceremonies. The Maya couldn't make it rain. Can we stop what we've set in motion? But there's also hope in the Maya story if you look for it. The civilization fell, yes, but the people survived. They adapted. Today, millions of Maya descendants speak Maya languages, practice traditions with ancient roots, maintain identities that survived conquest, disease, and half a millennium of colonial pressure. The great cities crumbled, but the resilience of the human spirit proved more durable than limestone. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps think about the farmer in Tikal, grinding corn in the darkness before dawn, tending impossible fields, maintaining faith even as the world changes around him. Think about the scribe carefully painting glyphs that would outlast his civilization. Think about the child playing in the plaza, unaware that she's living at the end of an era. They were people like you, struggling with forces beyond their control, doing their best with what they knew, loving their families, hoping for better futures. The pyramids still stand in the jungle covered in vines and morning dew, and somewhere in the canopy, a howler monkey is roaring at the dawn, just as it did 1,000 years ago when the plazas were full of people. The stones remember what was, even if they can't speak it. And perhaps that's enough. Rest well. Tomorrow you'll wake up in your own time, in your own world, with your own impossible challenges. But tonight you've walked through the streets of Tikal, drunk chocolate with the gods, and witnessed the slow, beautiful, heartbreaking end of a world. Sleep peacefully, knowing that even when civilizations fall, human beings endure. The Maya are still here. Their story didn't end. It just transformed. Good night.